One of the most common misconceptions we run into as new people are finding their way into the world of motorcycle camping is this idea that motorcycle camping is a super duper cheap hobby. The truth is kind of complicated. It can be, and I think it actually is over the long run, but it also isn't. It's kind of a yes, but also no answer, so let's just dive into it. A few years back, I went on my first multi-day motorcycle camping trip on the Washington BDR, and as an experiment, I tracked every single expense I had on that whole trip, and it broke down as follows. We're out there for 7 days and 6 nights total because we stayed one night at the beginning and rode home. In total, I spent $199 on fuel, $230 on food, and that is including, I bought one meal for the whole group. There were 6 of us, so yeah, that was expensive. Otherwise, it would have been about half that. I paid about $60 in camping fees, and in Washington, you can buy a Discover Pass, which gives you access to a lot of campgrounds and stuff. That was $35. So overall, for a week-long vacation, I spent $513.17, which for a week is exceptionally inexpensive in terms of a vacation. You can't even get a hotel for 2 nights in most places for $500. Not every trip has to be a week-long excursion. Some of us can only get out for the weekend or a night here and there. Maybe you do one big trip a year, but a single night dispersed camping in the national forest can be exceptionally cheap. You're just paying for food, which you would have paid for anyway at home because you gotta eat, and gas to get there, which on a bike is super cheap. Depending on how far you go, you're not gonna spend more than 10 or 20 bucks. So yes, motorcycle camping can be cheap, but, and it's a big but, it definitely isn't cheap right away. After you've got all your gear and your bike figured out, then you can go out and have a great time without spending a ton of cash, but there is a significant upfront cost to overcome before you get there. So let's talk about costs. Let's start with the obvious costs. To go motorcycle camping, you need a couple things. 1, a motorcycle. 2, camping gear. What? I said it was obvious. Obviously, these things cost money, and if you're starting from scratch, that's a significant outlay. But most people don't come to moto camping totally fresh. Most already have a bike and are looking to branch out to camping on it. So that just leaves motorcycle camping gear. One of the big pitfalls we see people fall into is the cheap gear pitfall. Buying motorcycle camping gear can be counterintuitive. When the idea is to save money, right? You want to do something that's cheap. You're getting into motorcycle camping because it's cheap. Then the temptation can be to buy the cheapest gear you can possibly find. While this can be a viable entry point for those who aren't sure they will like it, you know, you don't end up spending a bunch of money and then abandoning the hobby and being out $1,000. Buying cheap gear almost always means you end up spending more in the end, in our experience. So yeah, you can go to Walmart. You can buy a tent for 45 bucks. You can buy a $25 sleeping bag, a $30 sleeping pad, and a big duffel bag to carry it all in for 20 bucks. So you're out the door for less than $200. A good moto camping tent costs more than that on its own. What a bargain, right? Problem there is cheap gear is cheap for a reason. Good gear will last longer, be easier to use, and make your trip a lot more comfortable. You might get out there and get no sleep because your bag is not as warm as it says it is, because those cheap bags tend to exaggerate their temperature rating. Your sleeping pad won't be as comfortable as it needed to be. Your tent may be leaking, or bugs might get in, or it might not ventilate well and you end up getting rained on in the morning from all the condensation. And those types of things are the types of things that can ruin moto camping for you entirely because you had a bad first experience. That's all it takes to turn some people off from camping forever. Even if you do get through that first uncomfortable night and decide you want to keep camping, the stuff you bought is not going to last you, and you'll end up buying them better gear eventually anyway, in my experience. So here's a caveat. Let's just eat the obvious elephant in the room. I realize that the official channel of a website that sells expensive motorcycle camping gear is maybe not the most unbiased source, but our number one goal has always been to help people get into this hobby that we love, and we don't want people having bad experiences that ruin camping for them and or spending more money than they have to. We've learned the hard way. We don't want you to have to do the same. Our philosophy has always been people first and products second. We want to help people get into the sport that we love. We want to help grow the sport that we love, and we sort of hope that on the back end, maybe you'll be grateful enough for our help that you'll come back and buy products from us. That formula doesn't work if we're steering you wrong and or selling you super cheap crap just to get your money up front. We want you for the long haul. Like most things, there are multiple levels of motorcycle camping gear, and it can get very expensive. So nobody's saying that you need to spend thousands of dollars on an ultralight setup from the very beginning. That's maybe something you grow into or replace a piece at a time as you get more and more into camping. But we strongly encourage buying decent quality gear from the get-go because it will be cheaper in the long run and you will have a better time. To that end, we've created what we call the best value Motocamping kit. It's not the top of the line super expensive stuff, but it is the least expensive gear that we think will work well and last you a long time. That kit comes with a tent, a sleeping bag, sleeping pad, pillow, and a jet boil for cooking and coffee. So it has everything you need to get out and go camping for the first time, aside from a bag to carry it in and obviously a motorcycle to put it on. That kit is $800. Not cheap by any means, but you only have to spend 4 nights in the woods instead of booking hotels for it to pay for itself. So, is motorcycle camping expensive? Well, the cost of camping gear stings a little up front. That's obvious. But you only have to go camping a few times a year to make it an extremely worthwhile investment over the long run. Other ongoing hidden expenses of motorcycle camping, just stuff that's associated with bike ownership. So oil changes and other maintenance, that costs money, right? You're gonna change your oil once a year probably. You're gonna need tires every 3,000 to 5,000 miles, depending on what tires, what kind of bike, what kind of riding you do. You're gonna have to pay for insurance on your bike, and you're gonna need gas unless you just plan on sitting on the thing in your garage. At the end of the day, is motorcycle camping cheap? It is a cheap way to travel for sure. You don't pay for hotels and your gas is much cheaper. It's a cheap vacation if you already have a bike and camping gear. The per day outlay is significantly cheaper than most other types of vacation. Just as an example, $500 a week, which is what I spent on my BDR trip, compared to a Disney World trip we took a couple years ago. That was $3,000 to $4,000 a person for a week. Airfare, accommodations, everything. Or a less expensive example, we just got back from Mexico for my daughter's graduation. On that trip, we spent $1,500 a person for, I think, 6 days. So even cheaper than that to go out and have a great time if you're into the whole camping thing. Remember that the upfront cost of gear and motorcycle gets amortized out over the life of both. Every time you use that bike and that kit, you are reducing the overall cost per trip, which means the only sensible thing is to go out and go motorcycle camping as often as possible. It's the best way to maximize your initial investment and minimize your per trip costs. That's just math. I have to go camping more. It saves me money. So from that perspective, yes, motorcycle camping is a cheap hobby, but there is a significant upfront hurdle before you can start enjoying the low-cost benefits. It's not cheap to get started, but over the long run, it's one of the least expensive ways to escape the daily grind. So really, you can't afford not to get into motorcycle camping. It's the only financially sensible choice. Whether you're planning your first trip or your 100th trip, motocampnerd.com has all the riding and camping gear you need to make it a success. Pop over to the site and check out the world's most carefully curated selection of motorcycle camping gear, because here at Motocamp Nerd, our goal is to help you pack small so you can camp easy.